We are at VCU. I'm Dominic Wilson. I'm the director here at the ICA. And for our part, we're really pleased and proud to be able to collaborate with the Richmond Racial Equity Essays project to co-host and work with you to present this evening's program. Our involvement in this evening's summit really goes back to earlier this year, and in fact it was really initiated by Duron Chavis, who is also participating tonight, co-moderating tonight. We had just finished up two projects with Duron, the Resiliency Garden that was outside here on Belvedere and Grace, and then Duron's great video interview series, Black Space Matters, that we also that we were able to support, produce, and put out on YouTube, and so many viewers for that, such an impact. Let me say a few just words before I introduce Ebony Walden, who's going to start us off this evening and introduce the program. As a contemporary art institute, we know that contemporary art or contemporary institutions of contemporary culture generally right now across the US and beyond, the matters that we're discussing tonight are top of mind, should be top of mind. And we know, especially here at the ICA, that to be an institute that claims to be about the culture of the present, the culture of the future, that matters of racial equity, cultural equity broadly, need to be a primary responsibility, and really we can't do anything else unless we're attending to those matters. So it's a big responsibility too to handle these things in this city at this time, with the history and the present that we still live with in this city. So I'm going to hand over to Ebony in just a second. Just to say, I hope whether this evening or soon, hope you'll have a chance to see the exhibitions that we have on view. The exhibition of Ibrahim Ahmed, artist from Egypt, the show by Dineo Bopape, they opened recently. And in fact, we have another show, partnership with 1708 Gallery, opens in 2 weeks, Jeremy Toussaint Baptiste, which will be upstairs on the top floor. So thank you for being here this evening. Thank you for watching online. I'm going to introduce Ebony. Ebony Walden focuses on urban planning, urban strategy, largely through her consultancy, and also teaches here at VCU in the Wilder School for Government and Public Affairs. So, Ebony, thank you for working with us on this. Thank you for allowing us to work with you on this, and I'll let you introduce the rest of this evening's program. Ebony Walden.
Is my mic on? I'll get here. Is that cool? Well, good evening. I am super excited to look out and see you all in the audience. There is a line in the book called The Alchemist. It's that when a vision comes forth, the entire universe conspires to make it happen. So I thank you all for being part of the universe that have conspired with me to make the Richmond Racial Equity Essays a product, a process, hopefully, and a conversation that we will continue here tonight. As Dominic said, my name is Ebony Walden. I'm an urban planner and a DEI consultant, and I like to say that my work operates at the intersection of race and place, right? And the place that I happen to be is Richmond, Virginia, and I'm hell-bent on turning the former capital of the Confederacy into the capital of racial equity. I think we can be a model. Thank you. And I think that we have some of the best and brightest minds that I have seen, and so this was a project to really highlight that. So the Richmond Racial Equity Essays, y'all probably know, is a multimedia project that focuses on advancing racial equity in Richmond, together with Megan Goff, who's my co-editor on the project. So raise your hand, Megan. And Duron Chavis, who was our videographer for the video series. Duron up. We asked 50 people from all sectors, all across Richmond, broad range of folks, what their vision for racial equity is and how do we get there. And so this project is a manifestation of that. So that manifested in 24 essays in an ebook, an 8-episode podcast, and a series of 7 video interviews, one of which will be premiering here tonight. And so for that, I just want to say thank you to a number of folks. One, to Duron and Megan for hearing my vision and saying, yes, I want to spend my time and energy over the next 9 months working with you on that. I want to thank my sponsors who I had this wild idea and they said, yes, we will give you money to do it. Robbins Foundation, Richmond Memorial Health Foundation, Chamber, RVA, let me see if I can remember all of them. Virginia Community Voice, Richmond Association of Realtors, Partnership for Smarter Growth, and I think that's all of them. If there's someone I missed, I will bring it up later. So give them a round of applause. Just for taking a chance on me. So if you're an essayist or interviewee, raise your hand. So that's like half of the room. Give yourselves a round of applause. It would literally not be possible. It wouldn't be possible without you. I would have no product to share with the world. So I just want to thank you all for being here tonight. We're going to have a lovely program. We're running a little bit behind schedule, but we'll be okay. So first, I want to introduce you to the project, and we're going to have a couple of essayists read short excerpts of their essays, and then we're going to show a video. This particular video is of the mayor and one of our city councilors. Duron will, my co-moderator for the evening, will introduce that video. And then we'll go into a dynamic panel, right? So we have artists, what I like to call art architects, a funder, and sort of a grassroots advocate, activist around art. What's the role of art? So we're trying to tonight not only give you a snapshot of the project, but continue the conversation. This is an ongoing conversation. It's not something that one sector or people at the top or folks that are grassroots. It will take all of us together to undo this. And I chose these essayists, Oscar Contreras, Leah Whitehurst Gibson, and Shekinah Mitchell, because I think their essays, give them a round of applause. Their essays represent 3 kind of buckets of work I think we need to do. Oscar's really focuses on the interpersonal interaction and how do we build community across difference and disrupt some of our bias. Leah's talks about what are the institutional behavior changes and mindset that institutions need to change. And Shekinah's really talking about what are we going to do about this wealth gap, right? We all know about it. And it's like everybody, speak on it. What are we going to do about this wealth gap? So that's like, we need to do the interpersonal work, we need to do the institutional work, but we need to also that overlap and work on these systemic issues. So without further, last person I would like to thank is myself, right? Thank y'all. So I got that from a friend of mine who was like, oh, in this commencement speech, Snoop Dogg thanked himself for all of the hard work he put into his career. I said, I'm going to receive that. And this was a lot of hard work, but it was absolutely my baby, absolutely worth it. And so thank you for conspiring with me on the project tonight and everybody that participated, even with your participation here tonight. And without further ado, I will introduce Oscar. They'll go 3 in a row. Please clap after they finish. And then Duron will come up and introduce the video. Thank y'all.
Thank you, thank you. This 9 months produced a beautiful baby. That's great. So I'm Oscar Contreras. I'm a radio host of Latino radio station, Radio Poder 1380 AM. And the title of my essay is Intentionally Connecting with the Other. I was 12 years old when I moved from Guatemala to Virginia with my mom and siblings to reunite with my dad after 10 years. Everything was new to me. I remember coming out of the plane and even noticing that the air smelled different. As a stranger, we have to learn so much about many things. Sometimes we have to rely on learning from others, but in doing so, we inherit their biases. I was told during my first few months in the US to be careful around black people. I was not to use the word negro, which is black in Spanish, around black people. I had to think twice before saying something like mis zapatos negros, my black shoes. I was told that black people would be mad, that they were violent, and could hurt me. If we believe the lies we are told about others, it will dictate how we act and react around them, thus provoking and feeding stereotypes that keep us all separated. We want to be comfortable and accepted, so we opt to stick to those we know and understand. Having no relationship is much easier than building a relationship with people that are different from us. I want to challenge other Richmonders to intentionally build relationships across people groups and have honest conversations to clear the air of any misperception and truly learn about each other. As a Christian, the Bible motivates me to take that challenge. In Revelation 7:9 says, "After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing there before the throne and before the Lamb." Now in Richmond, we have many different nations, tribes, people, and languages. And I believe we are a blessed region, but we don't know what to do with that blessing. How do we connect with others? Not everyone is willing to reach out unless it fits their agenda. Making a transaction with someone is not the same as building trust. It may look like you care while you get what you want, but it will not last. This type of transactional relationships end up creating a bigger gap and resentment. We also have to be willing to sometimes be offended by ignorant comments or actions. We must take this as an opportunity to build a bridge or be the bridge. We all need love, justice, peace, and relationships. Let us not act like complete strangers. We are all humans that come in different shades. Let's get to know one another and care for each other. If we only stay with our own, we will grow apart, creating animosity and fear of the other. If we are going to create a racially equitable Richmond, let's be intentional about creating hearts, as well as physical spaces and conversations that can clear the atmosphere, giving all of us a familiar air to breathe. Thank you.
Y'all are kind. So my name is Leah Whitehurst Gibson. I'm the executive director of Virginia Community Voice, and was happy to be a part of this project with Ebony. So I'm going to read you an excerpt from my essay. We need a radical imagination for something new. An equitable Richmond requires something much deeper than policy change, diversity and inclusion efforts, racial equity training, or even targeted grant making to BIPOC-led organizations. All of these things are important, but they are intellectual approaches that don't heal the racialized trauma that people of color and white people carry around in their bodies. They don't offer us a process through which BIPOC are trusted to radically reimagine our communities. A word about power shifting. I understand power to be the ability to help or to hurt. Communities have been historically marginalized. Communities who have been historically marginalized typically do not have the power in the institutional sense. A story might help illustrate what I mean. Last year, my husband and I tried to refinance our house. When we got to the bank, the loan officer took one look at us, asked what we were there for, and said, "Well, there's a $500 appraisal fee. Do you have the money out of pocket to do that?" We did, of course, but we didn't get the loan. Later, we inquired as to why, and the bank said there were problems with our credit. Both my husband and I have credit scores well over 720, the minimum to get the most favorable rate according to the bank, and very little debt. We asked specifically about what was problematic about our credit, and they told us it was unclear. but it was not unclear to us. Credit scores and so many things about access to wealth in this country were built to keep me, my family, and people who look like us out of the wealth building process. And when we ask why, the answer is typically, well, it's something you did wrong. It is always framed as a personal problem, which obscures the truth that our legal, financial systems are not built for Black people. In fact, they are built intentionally to keep us out. My husband and I walked away from that experience feeling dejected, angry, and powerless to change anything about that interaction. That loan officer, the system she is a part of, and the algorithms that were used to determine whether or not we could get that loan all had the ability to help or hurt us. And both historically and in 2021, they chose to hurt us. The system used past knowledge of what investments are safe and what is risky, and they determined that we were not safe. That is what power does to maintain itself. People with power can make judgments about who they perceive to be safe or unsafe and build policies and practice around those judgments. It is hard to see this power sometimes, especially when it works for you, not against you. That's why power shifting is needed. A shift in power puts the ability to change unjust systems in the hands of the people who can see injustice clearly. If we are committed to racial equity, this is a path to real change. Until people who are directly impacted are the ones designing the solutions to the issues they have themselves identified, we won't close the gaps in outcomes for all of our communities. If we build a more just and equitable decision-making process, it will be good for people of color, yes, but it will also be good for everyone else too. Right now, paternalism in nonprofits says white and wealthy people with academic credentials know better than disadvantaged communities they serve. Until this assumption changes, we will not have equity. People of color having a seat at the table is the bare minimum. Equity demands more than this. People of color and other historically marginalized groups need to be building the table. Thank you.
Hey, y'all. I'm much shorter than Leah. My name is Shekinah Mitchell, and the title of my essay is From Red Lines to Brown Circles Again, Reviving the Legacy of Maggie L. Walker for Inclusive Economic Liberation. Cash rules everything around me. Cream, get the money. I knew y'all would have my back on that. So you don't have to be a Wu-Tang Clan fan to identify how these lyrics may illuminate some of our nation's greatest values, money and capitalism. In fact, racism as we know it was actually constructed and fueled by capitalism. Author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, Ibram X. Kendi, calls racism and capitalism conjoined twins. Because whether we're talking about slavery, the prison industrial complex, human trafficking, and the list goes on, this dynamic duo has fueled some of the most treacherous institutions for Black and brown communities in our country. The tethered relationship of capitalism and racism requires that the dialogue about a more racially equitable Richmond includes an honest conversation about money and wealth. We address this by invoking the legacy of Richmond's own Maggie L. Walker to rebuild access to our own financial institutions with inclusive practices aimed at closing racial disparities and promoting communal gain over capitalism. Mariette Allen is quoted saying, "Cash is king, but credit is power." While there is still much work to be done, the faithful advocacy for workforce reform, like increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and a renewed focus on small business investment are pushing us in a more hopeful direction to increase cash flow. However, in today's society, whether building wealth through home ownership, so a mortgage, or through entrepreneurship, so a startup loan, line of credit, business credit card, engaging with financial institutions to borrow money has become a prerequisite for building wealth. With this in mind, and I'm not a rapper, but if I were to remix Wu-Tang's classic, the title would be Cash credit, and capital rule everything around me. Because this interdependent trio are the formula to determine wealth in this nation. And all three are tied to financial institutions and economic systems of racialized oppression. So let's talk about these red lines that got us here. The actual practice of redlining changed the social and economic trajectory for people of color in Richmond and communities across the country, deeply restricting access to mortgages, business loans, and other capital. Richmond's East End, North Side, Jackson Ward, and parts of South Side within closest proximity to downtown were all redlined. These lines were used to divide, to separate, and reinforce racial hierarchies. Although policy has changed for many communities in Richmond, these red lines have not been erased. Through programs like credit counseling and repair and down payment assistance, we have spent our efforts building on-ramps for people of color to be considered worthy by banks. These efforts have made a difference for some families in our community. However, this falls short of justice. Our goals must grow beyond increasing bankability into financial systems built on capitalism, corrupted by racism, and instead stretch to create inclusive communal pathways to economic liberation. So how do we get back to brown circles, or in other words, what would Maggie do? Right? She was quoted saying, "The pennies, dimes, and dollars of one individual may be few indeed, but the combined dimes and dollars of 1,000 individuals changed the weak word few into the powerful word many." When others were drawing red lines, Maggie was building brown circles.
So you're about to watch some of my art, and to quote Erykah Badu, I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shh. But no, really, this is, I think for many of us, we live in this era where we have drawn caricatures of people. We live online, Twitter, you know, these are people that we scroll, we see them on our feed, we read articles about them. But this particular interview was really important for me in terms of humanizing two of our elected officials. You know, for better or worse, you know, Mayor LeVar Stoney has his supporters and he has his detractors. Ellen Robinson has her supporters and has her detractors. But when you get these two people in a room to talk about their personal narrative, it changes the dynamic of whether or not you agree with them or not. It's like these are still people having human experiences. And I think that's really important in this day and age. And it's, you know, I guess the first steps to building trust, to getting to know folks. So I want you all to embrace this interview, share it around, you know, for the folks that don't like Stoney or the folks that do love him. You know, this is a really great example or opportunity to peek into his life in a conversation with someone that has, you know, they've clashed a lot. For those who are from Richmond, you know that Ellen and LeVar don't often see eye to eye in terms of the policies and things that they're trying to do. But in this moment, when we had them at the Black History Museum, we could see that they were both coming from the same space, trying to figure out the same problems, and they were inspired by some of the same similar experiences as Black people in the city of Richmond and in the state of Virginia. So, check it out. I didn't do that. I just, it had sound when I gave it to him.
Vanna, do you know we don't have any sound down here? Here we go. Still no sound. So why don't we let them get the sound together? Give a round of applause for Vanna up in there. We know ish happens, don't we? It didn't happen. It didn't happen for the past 18 months. So we're gonna roll with it. We're gonna lean with it, and we're gonna rock with it, right? Y'all with me? If y'all with me, say yeah. So we're about to get this panel party started. So Duron Chavis, who will be my moderator this evening, come on up and have a seat, as do all of the panelists. Come on up, and we're going to get this conversation about the intersection of art and equity started. And why don't y'all just give us a round of applause, encourage us. I don't know if my mic is on. Do y'all hear me? Yeah. Oh, it's on. So I'm excited to share this moderating role with Duron Chavis, whom I think is like one of the hardest working people in Richmond. So I just want to take this opportunity to give it up for Duron.
Thank
you. When we went to shoot Duron's video, because I had to get him on camera and from behind camera because he has a lot to say, we went to the St. Kofa Orchard, and it's a beautiful space. So if you're in Richmond and you have not visited, it's a beautiful space, and there's 6 or 8 murals there, so check that out. But anyway, welcome to this evening. We have a lovely panel here with you all today. We have Janine Bell from Elegba Folklore Society, Enjoli Moon from Africana Film Festival. We have Nastassja Swift, who's a multimedia artist, but she works with sculpture and fabric, so she is amazing. Rocha, who's also a multidisciplinary artist, so thank you for coming and being with us tonight, Eva. Kendra Jones, who is with the Richmond Memorial Health Foundation. And Trey Hartt from Performing Statistics. So excited to have these folks here tonight, and then I'm going to turn it over to Duron to get this party started.
So I'm honored to be here with all of you. This is some of the smartest people I know in the city. But just to get it started, Omalade, I consider you one of the vanguard in the city as it relates to Black art and culture, and you've been running the Elegba Folklore Society for 30 plus years now. What is that? Yeah, it's about 30 years. You know, bringing the important work of telling the story of the African diaspora and African people here in Richmond, Virginia as well. In the light of this conversation around racial equity, how have you, I guess, seen your work evolve? What is it? What would you say is the impact of arts and culture, of using arts and culture to connect, you know, the past to the present and to imagine the future, i.e., St. Kofa? Right.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you, Ebony, for inviting me to be here. This is a beautiful assemblage of people here and there. And a lovely place. This is like a container. This place is like a container where something can form.
That's it.
And express itself. In calling the name of my mother, Ashun, confident in the flow of the clear water, that beckons the sweetness of life. My father, Orumula, the voice of God, my protector, Eshu Elegbara, who opens the roads, bringing clarity out of confusion. My work has been vital to our evolution story. I've been called and guided, I think, to do this work, to become the Sankofa. And for those of you among the Ashanti, there are Adinkra wisdom symbols. The Sankofa is, of course, one of them. which means that we have to go back and fetch it. We have to know where we've come from to know where we're going to. And for Africans born in America, that has been a very difficult challenge because the water has not been clear. It's been very murky. It's like sometimes I compare it to cut flowers. We all love them, don't we? The bouquets of roses and so forth and so on that we may give or receive. And they're wonderful and beautiful initially in the water. That appears to be clear initially. But they don't last that way. The water changes, the nature of the flower changes, it becomes something distorted from its reality because it's been cut from its root and it cannot survive. And Africa is the root and America is the water. I've been called to be the ayah, the fern, the endurance, because it's a long haul. And somebody passed the baton to me, and I pray I'll pass one to somebody else, because none of us sitting in this space will be able to accomplish it all. Ebony, I was so happy when I heard you say just now in reading about this project, how Richmond and maybe Richmond in Virginia can flip the script. And see, that's what our elders say in our folklore. We have to go out the way we came in. And so all of us who are here are involved elementally in this shift. We're involved, and some of us may have volunteered. I did not. I did not raise my hand and say, pick me, who would? Scratching in the dirt every day, walking up the hill every day. But I did accept the assignment, and I wouldn't do it differently. I wouldn't do it differently because it's about freedom and liberation. The future is now. So for me, art expression, especially in the cultural art, starts with spirit. Right. I mean, where else can we begin? Spirit as the star stuff of culture. You know, that's our core, and then the culture wraps around it. So the cultural arts express from this core place. Identity, place, soul, genius, oneness with nature and the universe. I think that's who we are in humanity. And if we can reconnect with that, then there'll be brown circles everywhere, or all kinds of circles, everywhere. You know, the circle is the thing that has no beginning, it has no end. It's, as the Rastas would say, itinual. And the linear space is really a compartmentalized disconnect. So in this way, art is immersive, it's interactive, whether it's performing arts, whether it's visual arts, whether it's literary, whether it's material culture, whether it's theater, whether it's film. It's a bonding, it bonds energetically. It, as we intended at the Elegba Folklore Society, is a portal. It's protest. It's speaking truth to power. It's beauty. It's resolve. It's colorful. It rectifies. It exposes. It explains. It's a salve. We need to see ourselves, to know ourselves. And so in that way, it also becomes a transformer. At the Alegba Folklore Society, where, of course, we intend to engage people in experiential learning through the arts, we want people to then feel the courage of self-determination as a natural flow of energy, as a natural flow in the clear water, to feel affirmed. And so it's never, ever, ever, ever art for art's sake, even though the art that's created is quite lovely. And we encourage you to come on by the Cultural Center and pick yourself up a little something. But it always tells a story of connectivity in that circular space, which is vital.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Enjoli,
I don't want to follow that.
hey, look. But no, I really need to hear from you on this though, because Enjoli, we go back. I've known you for over 18, 19 years almost now.
Don't start telling yourself now. Yeah.
I know, right? But I own it because I've seen the evolution of your work, right? And I think that when I think about Africana, I think about you creating a platform that catalyzes conversation, right? And that we can experience the diversity of narratives of Blackness, right, through that platform. What would you consider the impact of that being, bringing those broader narratives into Richmond, into Virginia, and through film, what has been that impact? But then on the flip side, what have been some of the joys and the challenges that have gone along with that?
Well, a lot of it is wrapped up in what, Janine said. One of the beautiful things about being able to bring films to Richmond specifically, I am of the mind, I too believe that Richmond has the opportunity to be a model, Richmond specifically. But Richmond is overlooked. When we think about the Black national narrative, Richmond doesn't get spoken of. But this is the foundation. When we think about infrastructures and we want to dismantle things, where was it assembled? It's here that it was assembled. And it is here that a system of submergence happened around the truth. It is here that a system of submergence happened around Black reality and Black contribution. And so to be able to bring narratives, global Black narratives about Black reality, about Black contribution, about Black complexity to a place where it's been very linear, it's been very one-dimensional, means a lot. And to be able to do it in the spaces that we do it, that oftentimes help maintain those structures, right? So we get to go in and not just press play on a film, but we get to press play on the film and then have the people in the room talk about their experience with it. Because I don't care how packed the space is, you watch a movie by yourself. You watch a movie through your own lens, through your own life experiences. It's not until you open up that space for conversation do you begin to broaden. You have the opportunity to now kind of widen the aperture on what it's supposed to be about. And so it's been a blessing and an honor to be able to bring some of these additional narratives to Richmond so that people like me, because, everybody's welcome to Africana, but it's a FUBU experience. This is for us, by us.
Got it.
And I want for the people in the room who look like me to see reflections of themselves on that screen, reflections that maybe they haven't had an opportunity to see before, whether it be, I don't care if it's primary or tertiary, they see something that validates, that helps them understand they're not alone. And so to be able to do that and then to have them be in community with people who might have also been having those experiences or had another experience that enhanced now their own, means a lot. Additionally, because Richmond is overlooked, to be able to bring filmmakers, bring a level of attention to Richmond for these filmmakers around the globe. You know, one of the things we do with the festival is on Sunday, we take the filmmakers on a trolley ride through Black Richmond and help them to understand the connectivity to this place. You know, it's said that 1 in 4 Black people can trace their roots back to this region across the country, right? So Richmond just isn't some random space. And so helping them to understand that is key. So for Africana to be able to be a vehicle to bring people back home to a certain degree, to help people to understand, like, Richmond is a place that needs to be on your tongue. When you talk about New Orleans, when you talk about Charleston, when you talk about Baltimore, when you talk about Philly, you can't get to none of them places without getting through here. And so how do we make sure that Richmond is a part of, like, an ongoing and valuable conversation? And so I hope that's some of the impact that we're having.
Putting it on the map, girl.
We try.
I just want to pay homage to the art architects in the room, or the cultural architects that we have in Janine and Enjoli, to bring culture together, right? Particularly for Black folks. And I am such a fan, particularly of the Africana Film Festival. It's absolutely my favorite festival in Richmond.
Yeah.
And I try to go to everything, so Enjoli, you'll see me in the background.
Okay, yeah, you always come out. I appreciate that support. Thank you so much. And I mean, I think that's the joy too, right? And then, like, you know, I had a conversation with someone earlier, and they were asking, like, what do you like about being Black? And I was like, Blackness, you know? I mean, really. But the way love is a verb, Blackness is a verb too. Yeah. And when you see that in a room, when you see that energy come together and form like Voltron, that's something that you can't compare. And so to be able to create a space where you feel that energy, you know, the hugs, the laughs, the tears, the challenges that people see when they see certain reflections on screen, all that whole range of, like, human existence and emotion that can sometimes happen at Africana is a great sense of joy and pride. And so that is the joy, and it's worth the work, it's worth the everyday uphill climb, it's worth the dig and the scratch, because for 3 days you're just, like, overwhelmed with beauty. Right. And so, you know, that's the joy for me. The people are the joy.
Thank you.
Nastassja. I just love kind of reading about you, reading about your work. I first came across your work at the Africana Film Festival, I think was in 2019, and you had a film it was an event that was filmed, but it was also a film of Remembering Her Homecoming, which premiered there, and really talked about the stories and identity and images of Black women. But I was also taken by your most recent work, which is called, let me get it right, Canaan, When I Read Your Letter, I Feel Your Voice. And the central figure there was a quilted portrait of your brother, Canaan, who's incarcerated. And so I just thought it was lovely. It's in Hampton, Virginia, in one of their courthouses. It's a beautiful piece. And so it seems to me that storytelling is central to what you want to do with your work, and you work with fabric, particularly wool. So tell me, you know, what stories are important for you to tell, and why wool? Why fabric?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for having me, and thank you guys for being here. I think the stories, I dream a lot of my work, and I document those dreams so that way when I'm ready to come back to them, I can do so. I think the stories that are important for me to tell are the ones that are closest to me, or the ones that I'm living, because those are the ones I can tell the most passionately and the most honest. And I say that not to say that all of my work is about me, but to understand that there's a danger, I think, especially when we're talking about equity within the arts, I know there's a danger in telling other people's stories, and we see that a lot. There's a danger in the language that gets projected onto those stories that are told about us from the lens or voice of others. So I think what I have control over are the experiences and the things that I know the best, but also to understand that my art is almost like Enjoli said, it's simply a vehicle. It starts at my house, but it goes to other people's houses. And I think that there's power, especially in the piece that you mentioned about my brother. That was not an easy piece to make. It was not an easy story to tell, but I understood the vulnerability in choosing to tell that story and understanding the many Nastassjas that exist within that story. I'm not the only sister of an incarcerated person. My mother's not the only mother of an incarcerated child. But there's power in those conversations that get to take place after the work has been consumed. And I think for me, especially within this year, it's not just about what stories I'm telling, but where I'm positioning the work for people who get to engage in those stories. A big question that I've kind of been framing for my practice over the past few months or the past year is who has access to contemporary art and contemporary artists. And I've visited a lot of schools. Just speaking of K through 12, it's not everybody, and I think we all understand that. And I was just like, it's great that these kids get to learn about felting, but these are the only kids or the only systems that can afford to bring contemporary arts into their spaces. And I think what's been important for me is figuring out how I can position myself. As long as I'm living and breathing and making art, I'm a contemporary artist. How do I give access to contemporary art through myself? Whether that's a workshop, whether that's popping up in somebody's neighborhood. I was in Cleveland for 7 weeks, and I did these, I called them popping up in your hood workshops, where I would just go to Black spaces and neighborhoods and just pull up a table, have some wool, some water, some soap, and whoever was outside playing that day got to come and make something.
I love it.
They got to tell me about the kind of art that they love. They got to hear about my work, and I think that it's important for people, especially young Black children, to not just see my work in a gallery picture, but to like understand that I'm the person making this is the material, you can do it too. Felting isn't specific to Nastassja. And I think getting to share that with them was like the most inspiring thing I think I've ever done for myself. And I'm just like, okay, well now how do I implement this process or this practice into any community that I exist in? How do I implement it into my community? And just being kind of that vessel of access that I'm questioning. And fabric, I feel like, is the most organic kind of tool for storytelling, not just through quilting, which is how that piece existed, but I think about the way the clothes that we're wearing kind of hold us and our stories. And I thrifted this jacket, but maybe in 10 years, my grandchild or child or whatever is gonna be like, oh, my grandma was an artist and she wore this jacket at this artist talk, and it holds that story. I don't think about this jacket in this way in this moment, but those artifacts and those objects that we receive through like the lineage of our family, they hold stories and they hold memories and they hold history. So I think without even having to make art, fabric is a tool for storytelling. And I think that,
girl.
And when I got into working with fiber, my background is in painting and printmaking, but when I got into fiber, it was while an undergrad at VCU. And I just remember immediately being excited about a class that I originally did not want to take, but eventually got excited about how natural it felt to be able to tell the stories I was already interested in telling, but through this material that was familiar, but working with it in a different way. We're all familiar with wool, whether it's a sweater, a sock, or a scarf, but to transition it into a portrait and make these spaces that I describe as being vessels of stories and holding stories, it's really exciting to get to think about this material that already holds so much cultural and historical relevance in that way.
It was beautiful. I've never seen a portrait in quilt before, and it was lovely, and I wish I was able to see it in person. So if I go down to Hampton,
It's
have
not
to
in
see
Hampton
this.
anymore, but I am trying to bring it to Richmond.
Put it in the universe,
I've been putting it in everybody's universe. I'm like, talk to somebody you know and, bring this piece here, but yeah.
So I love that art as access, art as storytelling, telling the stories that need to be told, art as Black joy, art as bringing our past into our present. I think they have mics over here. Eva, we're going to turn to you, our second artist on the stage. You can pick it up. Eva is originally from Brazil, but is...
First, I'm going to have to stop and ask
You-
you to use my name, Eva.
Eva, there you go. Thank you for correcting me. Eva. Eva Rocha. Yes? Eva Rocha. Thank you. And so Eva is here with us tonight. She's also... Eva. See? I got to get it right. It takes a while to change. You're going to have grace with me. Eva. I've been saying Eva in my head, so I got to get it right. I got Nastassja. That took me a while. Eva, so you're also a multidisciplinary artist. I have the pleasure of looking at your work as well. I love how you have different forms of women that seem to be an important part of your piece. I also really loved your spoken word piece, the poem you have. And then I wrote the words down because I didn't want to miss it. In the piece, the poem was The People, and you said something like, and I'm gonna get it wrong, there will be no social justice unless we recognize ourselves within others. And I love that. And then your refrain was, I am the people. I just thought that was so powerful and so apropos for this evening. And you also are a storyteller, right? So art as storytellers through their work. And I'm wondering, what messages have you tried to convey with your work? And then what is your identity as a Brazilian American woman? How has that influenced your work? Eva.
Thank you. First, thank you for...
No. You probably have to turn it on. There you go.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much for listening to the poem. So I wrote that poem, and it is called I the People, and I wrote that in 2017 when during the Women's March. So during the Women's March, a lot of people went to the streets to talk about their problems, to protest, to advocate for their rights. So I remember walking and seeing many posters, and the posters always said, we the people, we the people, and they would chant, we the people. So I thought about a lot of that we, who is we, and who is the people. And for me, that's a matter of the ordering when we think about we, and then the other. And I thought about the people in that sense, and who were the people that were not participating in the marches, you know, in the endless marches that are everywhere in the world, and that have no channel to speak, and that have no voice, that are silent. So the poem was about that, about those people. So when, as you mentioned it, when I performed the poem, before I start, I talk about social justice, and I said there will be no social justice unless we recognize ourselves in all others. Because the problem of justice is, and the puzzle of the ordering is that injustice is connected, that injustice to one group or one individual is injustice to all groups. So it's all connected in the same root. And so for me, I have been thinking about that always. And now I am in the arts, and I think that also through the arts, and I think about the people in the arts, and I think about art. Art is a very powerful channel, and is a powerful channel to speak. But then I think, can we speak through art? Can the people, these people, speak through art? Can it be a channel? So I think through that, in my personal life. You asked me about me, Brazilian. We Brazilians, our identity is very mixed because we have a different dynamic than you have here.
Yep.
So for me, my father is indigenous and black, and my mother is a white immigrant. So I am a sum of all their struggles, let's say. But I was born in a very small place, so the art would not be accessible in all those places. And so when the place was born, it was only had 3 blocks. It was a very little place. And even to have one box with 6 color pencils was expensive. And so there were no art supplies there. Then later in my life, I moved to a bigger city, São Paulo, and I work with street kids. Then I work with homeless people, with indigenous community. I moved to Peru, and in Peru I work with campesinos, with landless people. And here in Richmond, with the Latino community. So
I'm LeVar Stoney, the mayor of the great city of Richmond.
And I'm Ellen Robertson. I am the vice president of Richmond City Council.
And to be included in art is a privilege. So now in art, we have been opening to all those conversations. And I have, so through now and other times in life, think about that, how can the art be used as a channel for that, and if that's possible. And I think that has been my question, and I have been answered with my own my own path in life.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I love. The theme again is, I love it. You said that talent isn't a privilege, right? We all have talent. I'm going to take that and put that in my back pocket and whip it out every time I can slip it into a conversation. But the art as access, and then I love how you're like, I took my art with me and created it with people. Everywhere I went and brought that same sentiment in Richmond, because we all have access to talent, to creativity, and then everybody should have that access. So I love that you've taken it international, and then you've brought it here with us to Richmond. So it's an absolute gift. So thank you so much. So give Eva another round of applause. So Kendra works for the Richmond Memorial Health Foundation. You lead the Hartt program, which is Health Equity in the Arts. Did I get that right? I got a lot floating around in my head. Me too. And you work for a health foundation, and I'm wondering why you fund artists. What is the connection that the foundation sees between art and racial equity and community health? Talk about that for us. Why are you all funding artists? What is the connection you see, and what is the impact through art that you are investing in Richmond?
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be on this panel with all of these exceptional individuals, and thank you for spearheading this incredible work. Again, my name is Kendra Jones. I'm the Director for Health Equity, Arts and Culture, and Accountant for Richmond Memorial Health Foundation, and I lead the Hartt's program. We know that the arts can be pretty and interesting to look at. But at the foundation, we also know that it can be a pathway to reveal the true nature of a community's health, right? We take that information, and through research, we know that arts and culture can impact our health individually, at the community level, and even promote overall population health. We also know that access to and participation in the arts has been shown to prove, which is backed up by data, lots of research.
Bring those numbers.
Counting here too, no. But it has been shown to prove that it can decrease anxiety, lower our perception of pain, decrease our blood pressure, treat memory deficits, which I may be having right now, and also give us an enhanced sense of social, physical, and mental well-being. At the community level, we know that the arts help communities actually share their story, and it matters who's telling that story. We know that the arts can be provocative. The arts can move people to think and to act on certain things, right? And so, like, if we think about it, for example, we can think about the HIV/AIDS epidemic and the AIDS memorial quilt that came from that, and how that quilt lives as a living memorial to those individuals that died from it. And then more recently, we can think about the March of Dimes and their baby blanket campaign, where they laid out hundreds of blankets on the mall in DC to shed light on maternal morbidity, where African American women are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women, 3 times more likely. And so those artistic expressions shed light on those health crises in ways that a white paper could never do. As far as funding artists, we've seen artists play the roles of practitioners, researchers, strategists, data collectors, storytellers, advocates. And artists have a way of sharing information that filtrates our minds, but more importantly, penetrates our hearts. Yeah, and so, like, through different social movements and even in different political climates, communities have partnered with artists to help share their stories. And as a foundation, we recognize that. And with racial equity, communities of color have used the arts to tell accurate, true narratives about the neighborhoods that they live in and their sense of community. They have actually also used the arts to tell the injustices that they face and their assessment of safety in their neighborhoods.
Hence hip hop.
Yes, yeah. And they also use that same medium of art to deepen pride in themselves, that sense of, like, self-identity and self-pride. And we know that communities of color use the arts to eliminate the disparities they face in order to advocate for changes to inequitable policies and conditions. Now I'm gonna say that again because that was a mouthful. I'm gonna say that again. So communities of color use the arts to illuminate the disparities they face in order to advocate for changes to inequitable policies and conditions. Case in point, the Civil Rights Movement. You can think back on some of the video images during the Civil Rights Movement where Black lives were treated abhorrently. You can also think back to that same era about the movies, the fashion, the hair, and then my favorite, the music. And something in particular that comes to mind is a song that was written by Nina Simone. And it was after 4 young Black girls were killed in a church bombing. And she wrote the lyrics to her song, Mississippi God Dang. Now, I said that, I cleaned that up for you all. But it was Mississippi God Dang. And we can say the same about Richmond. Richmond, God dang, you know? And through that song, you can feel the heaviness, the weight of Nina's exhaustion and her pain. But also in other songs, you can hear the Black joy that resonated. So, like, it's a both and, right? And we can think about songs like, and I could probably do this as a little roll call, but James Brown, Say It Loud.
I'm black and I'm proud.
You know it. Or we can think
You about to get us amped up in here.
We can think about it, more recently, like what Beyonce's, like brown skin girls. And I can't sing out style, I'm sorry.
Just like girls.
But we can think, that must be Albert. We can consider that, and we can even take Beyonce's sister, who through her artistry teaches individuals how we want to and should be treated with don't touch my hair. Don't touch it. You can appreciate it, you can like it, you can love it, but don't touch it. But it brings me back and makes me think about a quote, and I'm probably gonna mess it up right now, and I know that, but it says, we have to imagine the fair and just world that we want in order to create it. And that's what the arts allow us to do, especially with racial equity. And it's happening through these racial equity essays. So I thank you, Duron, Megan, and everyone who has participated in bringing these together, because it really is an exercise in imagination to help us imagine this racial equity that we want to see here in Richmond and all over. And so from that, I say, onward, let's move to action and let's realize it.
Yeah. All right. Now we need a Richmond Racial Equity soundtrack.
Oh, is that phase 2?
Right. Put it in the universe, it'll come back to you.
Oh man, so I really appreciate this conversation as it pertains to imagining. And I've known Trey Hartt for some years, and I've always known his work to be centered on working with young people in art. You currently serve as the project director for Performance Statistics, an organization that works with youth to imagine alternatives to youth incarceration. Is that correct? Over this long arc of your work, how do you see art, as a tool to, create a more just society in the context of you working with the young people? Because I feel like a lot of times, we're talking about art in its, macro sense, but like when we distill that and, creating those spaces with young people, how do you feel how do you feel art can be used in what ways to make those type of shifts in our imagination?
Yeah. Well, first I have to say, young people are brilliant. Young people are brilliant. And we need to start listening to them a little bit more. And maybe we won't be having to create a book about racial equity essays if we actually leaned in and listened to what the next generation actually needs and wants and names for themselves. So I think I want to say that first, but also it's such a privilege to be here. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Our stories are data, period. That's what we all said in some way. That's what I heard in all the essays that were read today. And that I think for a long time when it comes to creating a more just society, which I'm going to talk about culture for a minute, but I think lives in like the policy realm, which is a big learning curve I've had over my years. Stories have not been treated as equal as the numbers that justify these things. Right. But let me just say also that no number or data can justify reinforcing and contributing to the prison industrial complex in this country. We must abolish all prisons, all detention centers, and radically reimagine the way law enforcement exists in this country. It is urgent, it is absolutely urgent, and we can do that through art. And we can actually do all the things that people have been saying, use film festivals, use culture, use our own stories as a way to navigate through a really difficult conversation that we need to have in this country. That I'm not the first person up here to say this, but it is a reckoning with our history with slavery. Is it a reckoning with our history with capitalism in this country? And story is the data, I think, that really gets us through those moments. The first essay was really touched me about the interpersonal connection. And how do we relate to each other? We tell stories. When you go home, do you list like the amount of hours that you're on your phone, or the amount of like numbers that happen throughout your day, like how much your bank account fluctuated because you got that cup of coffee? No, we tell stories about our day. That's how we live our lives as human beings on this planet. And somehow we have, well, I know how. White supremacy has led us, but told us these lies that say data and hard facts are the only thing that can drive a just society. I haven't even started talking about young people. Clearly, it got me fired up.
It's okay.
But,
fired up and ready to go.
So for young people, our decision-making, those tables that we need to build, they are not accessible to young people right now. And so what I've found the most joy is that the creation of art, to tell our stories through art, is a way for young people to participate in policy conversations without having to force them in front of a boardroom and up to these like ridiculous meetings at the city council or the school board, and we expect young people to stand up there and eloquently tell us everything that they need for a just society. Right. No, art can do that. And it addresses that policy. It also, it addresses policy change without having to conform to what the policymakers need you to be in order to address policy change. My mentor, Dr. Tanya Pettiford-Waits, has taught me for a long time that, are you inviting me to the party and I can wear my own clothes, or do I need to wear your clothes? This is 2021 post-pandemic. I think we can all agree we're tired of wearing other people's clothes to be invited to your party. and that's one thing I've learned a lot. And if you work with young people, they do not have a filter often. I don't have kids. I don't have any plans to have kids. Do not have a filter. And so they show up authentically themselves constantly, in my experience, no matter what a young person has gone through. And I think that is the beginning of creating a more just society, when we can actually all show up more authentically and tell our stories as part of that conversation. But I also want to say, we can talk about a lot of performing statistics. The reason why it's performing statistics, because we perform this data, that's used to justify the system. But we can talk about all the numbers and the reductions in suspensions and expulsions. We've closed a youth prison in the state. We've done all these things. I think the most important lesson that I've learned so far, and my colleague Kate will say this, is that culture shift exists upstream of political change. And we heard this with Ms. Janine, we've heard this with many people on this panel, that if political change is to happen, it's not the law or the regulation, those need to change, but it's the culture. And I think it comes down to all the things that people have been talking about, how we relate to each other, how we lift up the next generation, how we center healing and love over criminalization and pain, and we're just prioritizing the wrong things in our society. Right. And it's clear, at least hopefully the pandemic has taught a lot of people, that our world is very unsustainable in many different facets right now. And to be a just society, that's the only way that we are going to be able to sustain ourselves moving forward. So yeah, I think ultimately it comes down to humanity and honoring our humanity, and the use of art as a way to reinforce that.
Amazing.
Thank you again to all of our panelists. This dynamic conversation is going on. And so now we want to open up the conversation to you all. If y'all have questions, if Megan and Ryan would grab a mic. If folks have questions either about the project or specifically to any of our panelists, we would like to open up, and/or if they have questions that are live streamed, that can jog up there.
Okay. Hello. So I just want to say the most visceral response I've had, like just sitting here, is that of gratitude. because I feel like you guys are like cultural intercessors. You know, I'm exhausted sometimes from being a Black woman, and I'm like, oh, could somebody just say it for me? And you did, and it was so beautiful. So I just want to thank you all because it was incredible. And I want to say, is it Nastassja? Nastassja, so pretty. But I'm a mom, and the fact that you pulled up that table in that neighborhood is everything. Because I was raised in New York, and when I got down here and was raising my daughter, these dominant narratives often masquerade themselves as being inclusive. I'm like, and I'm looking through the textbook, I'm like, where are we? And the fact that you can just reappropriate this textile and fabric and just use it as a form of resistance was so powerful. And I just really commend you, so I just want to say that.
Thoughts, questions, either for the panelists, project? We just overwhelmed y'all with awesomeness.
What are we doing next?
I'm having a drink and some dinner after this. That's my immediate next.
Can I jump in and say
I
something?
don't need to answer. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't know. But I was going to say, I feel like the racial equity essays as a process, you know, is something that could be replicated across sectors. I feel like we don't get enough opportunities of people who are most impacted by these inequities in our city or our region or our state or our globe or whatever in a room together, hashing it out, talking about how this stuff is hitting them and their theory, right, in tandem with their practice. So I feel like I'm not putting this load on anybody, but as I speak it, it becomes, you know, a communal thing. Somebody can pick it up. But I think that there's power in us finding ways to create these kind of like condensed cannons of conversation, right? And putting them all in an archival space, whether it be video or essay or whatever, like finding a way to encapsulate these different ideas in different sectors, right? I think for me, I feel like that is what is helping me grow, even in understanding different communities and the struggles that they face, is me being able to see myself in that work, right? But, you know, without us kind of putting it in a container that's safe for us to dialogue about it, you know, it's a longer struggle.
I'll just say, I love what Duron just said, and I think that that is on point. I also think that there's not one thing. I think that the evolution, the healing, it's all a part of an ecosystem that we're all kind of building out and trying to strengthen. And so I think you find the things that are happening around you that speak to your heart space. And if your heart space can inform your handwork, then you'll stay fortified in that. And you will be the change that you want to see, right? So I don't think there's a right or a wrong way. I think it's finding the thing that you feel connected to. If you love dance, if you love gardening, if you like film, if you are passionate about youth prisons, if you are passionate about writing, whatever that thing is that's on you, honor that. And I think in the honoring of that, you are making the change. So, you know, I just want to say I don't think it's like one thing that everybody in a single community can do to make the change. We all pour ourselves in, and something beautiful will come out.
I just want to say the purpose of my question was not the question, y'all. It's more of a, you know, as an audience. It's always nice to hear these things and have these conversations, but I've been to multiple conversations. And I'm doing the thing that's passionate to me, but I want to make sure that everyone here has a mark, their
So, let me just say this real quick.
Go on.
So, Ebony invited me to be a part of this. Like, she called me, right, and was like, "Hey, I'm getting ready to do this thing. You know, I saw this Just Cities thing that Tony Griffin had done. What do you think about it?" I was like, "Yo, I'm down." So in that moment, right, she didn't even have to explain like what else was gonna come with it.
It was like, I got video equipment. What
like,
we gonna do?
what we doing? And so I bring that up because it's like just that spirit of collaboration, like that sincere, like, yo, like I feel like we need that more in our city. And I'm gonna say need it not just in terms of our own sectors, because like I consider myself like, I'm an urban farmer, you know, but I was in art, I'm in arts and culture. Like like my work is intersectional. It bleeds across all these spaces. So the more magic that we can make with that type of alchemy of like, yo, you know, I'm not an urban planner, but Ebony is. And so like, let's figure out how I can bring what I'm doing over to that space and start hodgepodging the stuff together. And that's the magic in my opinion.
I think I would simulate, there's a number of things. So, because people want to, what's next is a reasonable question. But I think that transformation takes time, right? And so there's this tension between the transformation that needs to occur in us as people, as a society, and changing our relationship and the need to act. I don't think that there's a single people of the 50 people that were involved in this process that aren't already doing the work. Mm-hmm. They are people that already have, and these folks here, they already have their hands to the plow, and they have offered up to our community solutions, best practices, thoughts, and ideas, and it's up to us to say, yes, I want to join that. Yes, I want to collaborate with that. Yes, I want to fund that. Yes, I want to bring that art to Richmond. And so I know half of y'all in this room, y'all already have y'all hand to the plow. So for the essays and the project, read, listen, I think that I sat down with, just because I had to read all of them several times, one day I just printed them out and sat down, and I was transformed by them. And I do this work all day, every day. So one, allow yourself to be transformed, and then allow that transformation to transfer to someone else and transfer to a body of work, whether you're attending something, whether you're funding something, whether you're advocating for something, whether you're supporting somebody who is doing something great. I think we all, as Enjoli said, have our own individual work, but if you need something concrete, there are over probably 50 strategies in the document that you can say yes to. Because this was designed to be practical. So if you're looking for something, and they're all of those things, we have a recommendation section where you can say, what are the strategies that I can either do personally within my institution or in Richmond in our society? And so they're very, very tangible things. So read it, listen to it. I think that I'd be interesting. I was on a call today and somebody was about something else was saying, one of my clients, is today Friday? Yes. I was like, is it Saturday? Help me, Lord. And then one of my clients was like, oh, we're gonna read one of your essays from the project, and we're gonna listen to your video, and we're gonna create a curriculum as part of our staff development. And I was like, oh.
See, right?
I said, they just gave me an idea. But the point is, what Duron is saying, sometimes this work is iterative, and that you have to have faith that you don't know the next steps until you make it, right? So I started as essay, and Duron said, let me bring video to it. And I said, I want to talk to more people. Let's do a podcast, right? And so it became this other thing. And then we were talking to ICA, and they were like, y'all still want to do your event? I said, yes. Let's do it. And so the iterative nature of it is something we also have to lean into. Like, when it's faith of when I take that next step, people are like, what's next? I said, I don't know. It's going to make itself clear.
That's it.
I don't have to grab, and neither you do. It'll make itself clear, and it's going to be clear for each and every one of us, I think. But if you need something practical to do, there at the back of each of those sections are practical strategies. Each of the authors and the folks that were interviewed are folks doing the work. If you like something, or if you see something, say something, fund it, collaborate with it, multiply it. That's what I would say. So it's 8:04. We probably have time for one more question. Yes, Christopher Rashad Green.
Good evening. I don't need a mic. I just really want to thank all of you for being on this panel. I know most of you, and the sister's question was almost similar to what I wanted to see, how the work everybody's doing is expanding. But really, it's already been here. It's been here for, I can see the ancestral blood passing through all of it. I've worked with Trey in criminal justice, where I work at now. I've worked with Sister on equity, my brother Duron on food justice. Sister Queen, Janine, brought me in and brought me to my roots, had me involved in really some real work, working in the community. And Sister Enjoli, I never got to share this with you, but for 40 years, I idolized this great Black Panther warrior, Sister Warrior. For years, I idolized and loved her. And you gave me the opportunity to meet Sister Angela here in Richmond. I mean, that was like one of the high points of my life. Just by you doing that, the work you do. So the work is always going on. Just had to be open and willing to jump in there. But I would love to see expand more. I'd like to see more sectors involved. And of course, for our children, which is a passion of mine also, because I actually went through the school to prison pipeline, so I understand exactly what you do. Very empathetic with what you do. I want to always be a part of it. I just want to give kudos to everybody on the panel, and if anything I can do to help move this conversation around health, about equity in Richmond, thank you.
I think in closing, we have what we need, both inside of ourselves and in the atmosphere, in the universe, is a lot of transformation and energy. I think we just have to put in the work of deep thinking and deep, long-term committed work. Like, we didn't get ourselves here overnight. It was 400 years in the making, probably even more than that. So it's going to take us a while to get out, but I think that we can do it together. And I think that the ideas, the innovation, the energy, the dynamism is in this room, and it's out here in our beloved city of Richmond. Everyone I meet in Richmond, which is why I did this essays, I'm like, I am interacting with brilliant people all day, every day. Put your ideas down on paper and spread it throughout the universe. And so what I wanted to do was create a platform for greater thought leadership in Richmond, as I wanted to, on my little, I don't know, what is your little corkboard? It's like, amplify your public voice. But I'm not just doing me, I want to bring everybody with me. That there's creating new platforms for getting ideas out there. And so hopefully we can continue to do the work of getting more people. I'm like, I want to interview more people. I want to talk to more people, because there's more ideas, because it's not just the experts or folks with PhDs, it's folks that are doing the work, grassroots level work. And that was the point of tonight, people that are doing the work in their sectors and their line of work, whether it's a medium or it's bringing architects of this work, to bring them and say, this is the work I'm doing, join me, and how can we work together to transform our city? So thank y'all for coming. I don't know, Duron, if you had any closing words?
Please share those videos. And it's not for me, my sake, there's some brilliant people. I want to thank you for the opportunity to sit at the feet of some of the most smartest people I've met. I mean, you have Elaine, and you had, what came out last week? Iman Shabazz. Oh my God! So the Iman Shabazz video was actually 45 minutes long, but they whittled it down somehow, some way to 15 minutes. So yeah, just check out the videos. I think it's there's a lot in there, in those spaces. Don Coleman, I was honored to sit on his porch. You know what I mean? It was some really striking conversations. So please share those, and because everybody's not going to have the time to read the essays, but you could throw on the podcast while you're driving, or you can watch the 10-15 minute video while you on your break. So,
www.richmondracialequityessays.com. We're in all the social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Richmond Racial Equity Essays. You'll find everything there. And if you're interested in collaborating, taking the work forward or moving more towards action, we're open to conversation. I fundamentally believe that the road will be made clear, not only for the project, but for us all, about how we can move toward racial equity. And the essays in this whole project was just to get some clarity, some ideas, some innovation that's already in the room, out in the atmosphere, so we can see it, so we can be transformed, and we can transform our beloved city. So thank y'all for coming out. Watch the video, it'll be out next week, but it ended up working out fine because we had a great conversation. Thank you all for coming out. God bless and good night.
Oh, the video worked? Okay. Where's Dominic? Is Dominic still in the room? Can we watch the video before?
So anybody who wants to stay and watch the video, please stay. I know other folks may have to go. That is totally fine. Govern yourselves accordingly.
All right, man. Can we please wait?
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Blessings to you.
Thank you. This is very good.
I'm putting good energy all over your trip. Thank you. And you're going to come back refreshed and transformed and with clarity. Thank you, ladies.
Yo, thank you, man.
Thank you
Sorry
so
about
much.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to meet you.